All right, today we're going to dig into a pretty significant presidential directive, Executive Order 14243. We're going to break down what it says, what it's trying to do, and why it matters, all based on the actual text of the order. So let's jump right in. The title itself tells you pretty much everything you need to know about the mission here. It's not some dry, bureaucratic name. It's a clear statement of purpose. We're going after a specific problem inside the government.
Okay, first things first, let's get the basic details on the table. This is Executive Order 14243. It was signed by President Donald J. Trump on March 20th, 2025. That little bit of info sets the stage for everything else we're about to cover.
So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about what this order even is. Then we'll get into the root problem it's trying to fix. After that, we'll look at the actual plan of action, see how it deals with classified info, and then wrap it all up with the big takeaways. First up, what are we really talking about here? Well, an executive order is basically a directive from the president to the federal government on how to operate. And this one, it sets a very, very clear goal. Yeah, Section 1, it really doesn't waste any time. The whole stated purpose is to literally tear down the walls that keep government data locked up. The idea is to stop doing the same work over and over again and to get way better at catching things like fraud and overpayments. And that leads us right to the big why behind this whole thing. The order points a finger at one central problem that it says is the source of all that waste, something called information silos. So what are we even talking about when we say information silo? Well, think of it like an actual grain silo on a farm. All the valuable stuff, in this case data, is locked away in one tall, isolated container. One government agency has its data, another has theirs, and they just don't talk to each other. And these silos, they cause some serious problems, which the order is super clear about. We're talking about agencies doing the same work twice, just general inefficiency, and making it way, way harder to spot fraud or find out where money is being sent by mistake. The key thing is, the order sees this as a major cause of government waste. Okay, so if these silos are the problem, how do you fix it? Well, Section 3 of the order lays out the game plan. It's not just a suggestion, it's a list of concrete actions for every government agency. And what's really striking here is the speed of it all. This isn't some 10-year plan. The deadlines are quick and clear. Some things have to happen immediately, while other big changes and reports are due in just 30 or 45 days. This is meant to be a series of immediate commands, not a long-term goal. The very first directive it's a huge one. It orders agency heads to provide full and prompt access to all of their unclassified data and records. And we're not just talking about sharing inside an agency. This is about tearing down the walls between different federal agencies. But wait, it doesn't just stop with federal agencies. The order goes even further, pushing for access to data from state programs too. Specifically, any state program that gets federal funding. That is a massive expansion of the pool of information we're talking about. And the wording they use here in Section 3C, wow, it calls for unfettered access. That's not a word you hear every day, especially in a government document, and you can bet it was chosen for a reason. And just so we're all on the same page, unfettered means totally unrestrained, no barriers, not confined. By using a word that powerful, the order is basically saying, look, the old excuses for not sharing data, they don't fly anymore. The goal is the widest access possible. And just to show they're serious, the order gives a super specific right now example. The Secretary of Labor is to get that same unfettered access to all unemployment data and payment records, effective immediately. Okay, so all this talk about sharing data, it naturally makes you wonder, right? If we're breaking down walls for all this unclassified stuff, what about the really sensitive information? Does this order apply to absolutely everything?
Well, the order actually carves out a special section just for classified material. And it's not about sharing it widely, but reviewing how it's controlled in the first place.
So agency heads are given 45 days to review their policies, and they have to ask themselves a tough question. Are we classifying stuff beyond what is necessary to protect national security? In other words, are we being too secretive? And is that creating another kind of silo? All right, so we've walked through the what, the why, and the how. Let's pull back and look at the big picture here. When you put all the pieces together, what does this executive order really mean? When you really boil it all down, it comes down to three main things. First, you break down the data walls between federal agencies. Second, you expand that access to include data from state programs that get federal money. And third, you do all of this to centralize information so it's easier to find and stop waste,
fraud, and abuse.
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. This whole order is a massive push for centralized data access. It's all about bringing information from a ton of different places into a single shared system that federal officials can use.
And that leaves us with a really big question to chew on. When you have a push for this kind of unfettered data sharing, how does that start to change the fundamental relationship between the federal government, state governments, and even us, the individual? It's a powerful question, and definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.